Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh-Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News, broadcasting live from the Arabiya studios. These are our top stories. 2 National Guard soldiers remain in a critical condition after what President Trump's described as a monstrous ambush-style attack, allegedly by an Afghan national near the White House last night. 3 men have been arrested over a fire that engulfed a Hong Kong apartment complex, killing at least 75 people. And Pope Leo XIV kicks off his first foreign trip of his papacy in Turkey. 2 National Guard soldiers remain in a critical condition after a shooting took place near the White House last night. An Afghan man has been detained by police and is in hospital. The incident has prompted the US to suspend immigration requests from Afghanistan. The president has called the attack an act of terror and has promised to remove foreigners from any country who do not belong in the US. Take a listen.
My great fellow Americans, earlier today, on the eve of the Thanksgiving holiday, 2 members of the National Guard serving in Washington, D.C., were shot at point-blank range in a monstrous ambush-style attack just steps away from the White House. This heinous assault was an act of evil, an act of hatred, and an act of terror. It was a crime against our entire nation. It was a crime against humanity. As President of the United States, I am determined to ensure that the animal who perpetrated this atrocity pays the steepest possible price. I can report tonight that, based on the best available information, the Department of Homeland Security is confident that the suspect in custody is a foreigner who entered our country from Afghanistan, a hellhole on earth. He was flown in by the Biden administration in September 2021.
For more on this, I'm joined from Washington by our correspondent, Tony Waterman. Tony, thank you so much for joining us. What more do we know about the suspected gunman and his motive?
Well, officials gave a press conference just about an hour ago where they did release some new details. They say that this suspect, 29-year-old Afghan national Ramanullah Lakhwal, drove cross-country from Bellingham, Washington, where he had been living with his wife and kids, with the intent of carrying out this attack in D.C. The FBI director, Kash Patel, said that Lakhwal's home was searched, that cell phones, laptops, and other types of electronic devices were taken, and that everyone in the house was questioned to see if anyone else was involved, whether that be somebody here in the United States or someone overseas. Investigators are still very much searching for a motive here in this attack that has not yet been determined. But as you heard the president right there, he does believe that this was an act of terror. The CIA says that Lakhwal came to the United States in September of 2021. This was after the U.S. military withdrawal in the country. And they say that he entered on this Biden administration visa program, which was known as Operation Allies Welcome. The CIA has also confirmed that Lakhwal had worked with multiple U.S. agencies in Afghanistan during this decades-long war, including a CIA-backed group in Kandahar, which is Taliban stronghold. So Patel says that the FBI is investigating to see if there are any known associates overseas or in the U.S. that may have influenced, may have had contact with this individual. But what investigators are really trying to do now is piece together what exactly happened between Lakhwal working with them in Afghanistan and Wednesday afternoon, when officials say he ambushed these National Guard troops, shooting them at point-blank range just blocks from the White House. Officials have now identified those soldiers as 20-year-old Sarah Beckstrom and 24-year-old Andrew Wolf, both of them having gone under surgery but remain in critical condition.
And Tony, the US is now halting all immigration applications from Afghanistan. What does this look like in practical terms, and what could be the impact of this move?
Within hours of President Trump calling for every Afghan national that was allowed in under this Biden-era visa program to be reviewed, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services issued this statement saying that it had already stopped processing immigration requests so that it could review its security and vetting protocols. So these applications are now not even being looked at. And it's really important to note here that while Lochinwall may have entered the U.S. on a Biden-era visa program, it was actually the Trump administration that ultimately granted him asylum back in April of this year. But this indefinite suspension and reexamination is really going to impact a lot of people. There were more than 80,000 Afghanis that were resettled in the U.S. in and around the military withdrawal. And then you have tens of thousands of more applicants that are either still living in Afghanistan or they're living in third countries. And this includes people who had helped the U.S. and NATO during the war. Those people are now left in limbo with no timetable on when this process will resume. But even before this freeze, there was this major backlog in the processing of applications, not just from people in Afghanistan, but really across the world. The total number of pending cases at the USCIS hitting 11.3 million in mid-2025, which was a record high. And of course, this is exacerbated by the president's immigration crackdown.
And is there potential for this revetting to go beyond just Afghan nationals?
Almost certainly. Immigration has been this central plank of President Trump's second term in office. And in this address to the nation that he gave on Wednesday night, he said that this attack underscored the greatest national security threat that this country is facing. In his estimation, that is immigration. In that speech, he also mentioned Somalis, saying that they were ripping apart Minnesota. And last week, he had actually said that he was ending this temporary protective status for Somalis that are living in that state. And this is something that he's been doing really since he got back in office with a whole host of nationalities. He has revoked this temporary protective status for Venezuelans, for Afghanis, Syrians, people from South Sudan, from Burma. This is really part of a larger immigration crackdown. I think that what we should be looking out for is if this attack is used as a reason to further restrict immigration or to remove immigrants that are already in the country.
And the president is deploying an additional 500 troops to D.C. But didn't a federal judge just last week rule that this deployment was illegal?
Yeah, you're exactly right. There was this federal judge here in D.C. that said that the deployment of these roughly 2,100 National Guard troops in D.C. was illegal and had given the administration until December 11th to appeal that decision before the troops would have to be removed. But appealing is exactly what the Trump administration did late Wednesday night after this shooting took place. They filed an emergency order to keep the National Guard in D.C. and the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says that the president is now deploying this additional 500 National Guard troops to the city. It's unclear when exactly those individuals are going to arrive or what their jobs are going to be when they get here. But their deployment, not just here in D.C., but in a lot of other Democratic cities in the United States where they have been deployed, has been incredibly controversial. President Trump says that this is all about crime prevention and law and order, but his critics believe that his motive is far more sinister. They see this as a form of political intimidation that is meant to suppress dissent and opposition. And this shooting certainly raises the stakes here because this deployment is no longer seen as simply, showmanship. There are real questions about the safety of these soldiers going forward.
Tony Waterman, thank you so much for joining us. We can now continue this conversation with Republican strategist Adolfo Franco. Adolfo, thank you so much for your time. So we've heard from US officials and they have revealed the shooting suspect was a special forces commander in Afghanistan and drove miles to carry out this attack. Will the story be cutting through for families at home celebrating Thanksgiving today in the US?
Well, it has a chilling effect in our country that this has happened. A couple of things have to be clear, though. I am a lawyer, so I believe in due process. First, this individual is still presumed innocent under our system of justice, and there will be a thorough investigation. It appears as though the individual had ties to the U.S. government, specifically the CIA, but that does not mean that he was either radicalized, changed his views later about the United States, or was throughout the process, as has been the case, people who work as double agents. So the country is concerned about what has happened and what it represents about, frankly, a vetting process that is questionable. If I may add, because the report was quite comprehensive, we just listened to from the correspondent in Washington. But it's important to state that last week, coincidentally, and I'm happy it was last week, the president and the vice president both had requested that Biden-era refugees, among them, this would be this individual who were already granted asylum, their cases be reviewed. Actually, it's 262,000 individuals. 80,000 of them are Afghan, but they go beyond Afghans. So we were concerned about the vetting process just because of the sheer volume that happened under the Biden administration and the processing under this administration. So this, in a sense, the president was prescient. He was feared that something like this might happen. Doesn't guarantee that you vet someone and then later they change, but it's important to underscore that this process was underway before this shooting.
And I just want to talk to you a little bit about Donald Trump. So, of course, we heard from Trump. And one thing that struck me about his statement after the shooting was the president went very political extremely quickly. Does this fuel and push division in America? Because now we're talking about re-vetting, and we obviously heard from Tony Waterman about that too. Does this embolden the feeling of anti-immigration in the US?
I don't think it's anti-immigration, but I would say this. I don't think the US policies are very different from what we're seeing happening in Western Europe today. You can pick any country in Western Europe. Of course, Hungary is the most extreme example, but the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, France, Germany, they're going through the same process we are, countries like Poland. The fact is, we're all for legal immigration. The president is for legal immigration. He's talked about expanding skilled workers visas to come into our country called B1. But there's a difference between that and a flood of either illegal immigrants or immigrants or refugees that have not been properly vetted. We'll see if this one was properly vetted or not, the specific case. I don't think it's xenophobia. I think countries want to control their borders. They want to ensure who's in the country is there properly. There is somewhere along the road, I can only speak about the US, but I think it applies to Europe, a constituency, a leftist view in our country that believes people are entitled to come into the country and just have either open borders or just claim political asylum and be given a very cursory review. I think those days are over. You might call that political, but that is one of the reasons President Trump was elected. All the polling in our country indicates the November election last year was decided equally on immigration and the economy.
Adolfo, Trump laid the blame of the shooting squarely at President Joe Biden's feet in his speech. And it's important to say 88,500 Afghans came into the US under the Operation Allies Welcome. Do you think it's fair to blame the former administration totally for this?
Well, I think in this regard, it is. You have to look at the comprehensive immigration policies of the Biden administration. For example, what was going on our southern border, where millions of people were coming in unprecedented numbers. Never that had happened in our country. It was very clearly a very lax, open immigration policy. To be clear, I favor the Allies' welcome problem with Afghanistan. I think individuals that served our country and are allied with the United States, I know some of these individuals in Washington, D.C. should be welcome in the United States, but they need to be vetted. And I think those policies in the Biden administrations were very loose when it came to vetting individuals. Again, we don't know the specifics of this specific case, but the broader issue, whether it's Somalis or Afghans, that had just a large number of people, Venezuelans who are apparently part of some of the gangs, just to simply say, and I'm Cuban American, I came from a country and I immigrated to the United States, just simply say because I come from a society that is either in chaos or in conflict or dictatorial is automatically a reason to be let into the country. I think that's a mistake, and I think the previous administration was very, very lax in that regard.
And do you think when you put uniformed troops on the streets, they are always going to be a target because of the country's foreign policy? We've seen this in many other countries before. So I think my question to you is the Trump administration putting these National Guard members, some people would say, in the line of fire and making it really dangerous for them?
Well, he would not put them in the line of fire. I live in Washington, D.C. He would not put them on the line of fire if the Metropolitan Police and the local government were able to provide safety for our citizens. Now, since they've been on the street, crime has reduced, homicides have been reduced by 29%, just as they've been on the streets, just their presence. Now, I live here and I see them. The idea that people have their guns out and so forth is just absurd. These people walk around pretty much as your film is showing, just as a police presence, the way you would see security guards or actually any kind of uniformed police. And they have then a deterrent effect. No one is being frisked. No one is being affected in any way. I've never heard a complaint, nor the liberal press would carry it in this country, about anyone being held back by the National Guard or anything. That's just absolutely absurd in terms of any such claim. So I think their presence is important. Now, if the local police is able to control crime in Chicago and Minneapolis and Washington, D.C., those troops will be withdrawn. But the fact of the matter is, it is a deterrent. And the mayor of Washington, D.C., a very liberal Democrat, has recognized that and has asked for an extension of their presence. And again, this is a city that's 94% Democrat, and she has called for that. So something is working, and I think it was the right policy.
Adolfo Franco, thank you so much for your time and your insights. And of course, happy Thanksgiving to you. Now, 3 men have been arrested over a fire that engulfed a Hong Kong apartment complex, killing at least 75 people. Police are charging the men with manslaughter, alleging their construction company was responsible for triggering the blaze in the city's Tai Po district. Patrick Fogg is in Hong Kong.
This is all that remains of One Foot Court. All 7 towers of the housing complex are charred black and gutted by fire. The buildings housed more than 4,000 residents, many of them elderly. Survivors are devastated.
We bought this apartment more than 20 years ago. All of our belongings were in there, and now that has all burned. What's left? There's nothing left. What are we supposed to do?
At least one firefighter is among the dead. They battled the 31-story inferno floor by floor overnight on Wednesday and throughout Thursday to find survivors and reunite them with relatives. Survivors have been gathering at temporary shelters, waiting for news on missed loved ones and fearing this: bodies transported to waiting ambulances outside. Police allowed animal welfare workers through the cordons to rescue pets. Investigations are underway into the cause of the blaze. The towers were undergoing renovations when the fire started. Police are pointing the finger at a construction company, accusing it of using unsafe materials.
Police have identified 3 individuals responsible from the construction company, 2 directors and 1 engineering consultant. Earlier, at around 2 a.m., we arrested the 3 men locally on suspicion of manslaughter. They are aged between 52 and 68 and remain in police custody for investigation.
Hong Kong's chief executive, John Lee, has ordered all housing estates undergoing renovations in the city to be immediately inspected.
The death toll has now risen to 83. For more on this, we can go live to Patrick, who is in Hong Kong. Patrick, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, officials say the fire is now under control, but it has been an absolutely devastating 24 hours for people living in the residential blocks. What is the latest?
Yeah, that's right. The blaze began on Wednesday, but firefighters have spent much of today putting out the flames as well. Authorities say the situation is now basically under control, but there is still plenty of smoke billowing out of the top of the charred remains of the buildings. I can see flames on at least one of the higher floors behind me as well. The operation here is far from over. There are hundreds of police vehicles and fire engines here as well. We imagine that rescuers are going to be working through the night. The death toll, as you say, has now risen to at least 83 people. There are still hundreds of people that remain missing. We understand that some of them may be trapped in the top floors of some of these buildings behind me. There was a little bit of positive news earlier on when a man was rescued from the 16th floor of one of the towers, but there is certainly a race against time on right now, and one would imagine that the death toll could still rise significantly.
And Patrick, the Hong Kong inferno has really put the spotlight on the risks of bamboo scaffolding. There have been 3 arrests in connection with the blaze. What are we hearing from authorities in the city?
Yeah, that's right. Bamboo scaffolding is not unusual in Hong Kong. It's one of the features of construction here, but there has been a debate about phasing it out, and this is perhaps going to quicken that move. But there are also question marks about other materials that were being used as well, some meshing, some netting that possibly wasn't up to fire regulations, as well as styrofoam. There are questions being asked as to whether or not that quickened the blaze that's taken place. There is also a question marks about some of the people involved. There are, as you say, 3 people that have been arrested, 2 directors, as well as an engineering consultant from a company that was involved with renovation works that were going on here. Officials say there's also a corruption probe into what's happened. We're not sure where that's going to lead to exactly, but there are lots of investigations underway with people wanting to find out exactly what went on. We still don't know what caused the fire in the first place.
As residents wait for news of family members and where they will live in the coming days, as we can see, you are at the scene, Patrick, yourself. Could you just give us a bit of a feeling of the mood there and what support people are being given?
Well, it really has been a grim 24 hours, and there are lots of people that have lost their homes, lost all their belongings, and one of the big problems that they're having to deal with now is where to house people. There are about 500 people that have been put up in a community shelter not far from here. There are 9 such temporary shelters that have been set up. A lot of the people that were affected were elderly residents as well. So I've just been over to one of those community centers, and there are groups of pharmacists that are bringing medicines that they weren't able to bring with them from their homes here behind me. But lots and lots of relief efforts are going on right now. The government has announced a whole suite of aid and support for people and temporary homes and shelters that are going to be rolled out in the coming days, as well as a fund, the $40 million fund to support victims and other people that have been affected.
And, you know, like you said, you just visited some people there. What is the feeling in Hong Kong? Because this is the first blaze we've seen like this in decades. Are people really shocked by what's happened?
Yeah, I think people are. There are people that are really questioning how exactly something like this could have happened, because Hong Kong does, in fact, have pretty strict standards when it comes to fire regulations. One of the things that's being brought to people's attentions as well is the fact that there were actually lots of inspections that have taken place regarding the renovation works that have been going on here. The renovations began in the middle of last year, and given the fact that there had been lots of inspections, one will be asking the question as to why exactly none of the problems had been rectified. So that is something that the government perhaps has to answer, but no doubt they will be looking to see who is responsible for all of it.
And Hong Kong has halted all election campaigning. Does this blaze pose a test for China's grip on the city?
Well, you talked a little bit about the mood. I think there just isn't any mood for any sort of election campaigning or electioneering right now. And indeed, the government may very well put the elections next week off altogether. It's difficult to say whether or not this affects China's grip. This is, of course, the second Patriots-only legislative council elections that were taking place in Hong Kong. There is very little of the democratic movement in Hong Kong left now. But certainly this is a test. One of the problems that authorities have been facing is voter turnout. They were worried that not enough people were going to be turning out for an election, which is essentially going to go the establishment's way exactly as they wanted. So perhaps by putting it off, this test will perhaps determine whether or not more voters come out in the future.
Patrick Falk, thank you so much for your time. Let's take a look at some of the other stories making the headlines today. The UN say at least 127 civilians have been killed in Israeli strikes on Lebanon since the ceasefire. Today marks the first anniversary of the agreement, and tensions between Israel and Hezbollah continue to soar as Israel accuses a group of trying to rearm. Hezbollah has not fired back following an attack on Beirut on Sunday, which killed their senior military chief. President Trump will not invite South Africa to participate in the G20 summit next year in Miami. Trump did not attend the recent meeting in Johannesburg over the alleged violent persecution of white Afrikaners. The US will also stop all payments and subsidies to the country over its treatment of government representatives at this year's summit. The son of a British couple detained in Iran says the UK government is not doing enough to secure their release. Lindsay and Craig Foreman were taken into custody by Iranian officials and accused of espionage, a charge they do deny. The couple claimed they were in Iran as part of a motorcycle tour around the world. Floods in Indonesia's Sumatra have killed at least 46 people and displaced thousands. That's after a tropical cyclone caused landslides, power outages and swept away homes. Rescuers are struggling to reach residents stuck in remote villages. In Southeast Asia, a week of heavy rain in Thailand has killed at least 33 people. Pope Leo XIV is in Turkey today as he kicks off his first foreign trip of his papacy. The pontiff is making a historic Christian anniversary by visiting the region before travelling to Lebanon. For more on this, I'm joined from Iznik by journalist Umut Sevdev Tango. Thank you so much, Umut, for joining me this evening and for your time. Let's just begin with the fact that Pope Leo has arrived in Turkey for his first overseas trip. I know he'll be visiting Iznik, exactly where you are. Why has he chosen Turkey? As it's important to note, it's a Muslim majority country with only around 33,000 Catholics.
It's correct. I think that's why Pope chosen Turkey. But also I would like to underline that the Catholic Patriarch Bartholomew I, he invited Pope to Turkey because it is an anniversary which is going to Pope reaffirmation tomorrow in Iznik, is the anniversary of the 17th anniversary of the first Council of Nicaea, which is held in Iznik area. That's why he came to visit Iznik tomorrow. And the main reason he come to Turkey, because Patriarch Bartholomew's I, he invited to make to show the world how Catholics and Orthodox can come together in a Muslim world. So it's kind of
I'm afraid we have actually lost the line to Umut Sevdi Tangor, who was just speaking to us from Iznik in Turkey about the Pope's first visit to the country. If we can get her back on the line. Oh, you're back on the line. I do apologise. Sorry, we lost you briefly then. We were just talking about why the Pope had chosen Turkey. I just want to move on a little bit because the Pope did meet with President Erdogan earlier as Turkey positions itself as a mediator in international conflicts. What was the Pope's resounding message?
Basically, he emphasized the importance of dignity in society, where religion plays an important role. Before the line cut down, I was trying to say this meeting is important for Christianity because Orthodox and Catholics are coming together in a Muslim country, but is also important for the meeting between Christianity and the Muslims. So Pope said today, in a country like Turkey, where religion has a central role, it's very important to protect the dignity of all. God's children, we are all, he said, we are all God's children, and those whose hearts are open to the gods will promote the common good and treat everyone in a goodwill. So he tried to also underline that the religious is not only for the Muslims and Christianity, for the whole world.
And Pope Leo will then continue his tour in Lebanon, which has faced continued attacks from Israel as unrest in the Middle East does continue. What can we expect from his visit to Lebanon?
Well, basically, I think it is a symbolic visit because he is going to underline again in Lebanon about the peace, unity, and interfaith dialogue between Christian and Muslims. He will meet again leaders in the Lebanon and young people and other citizens in Lebanon. And it shows that global attention but one visit cannot end up in deep conflict or any resolution in the Middle East. But it can have influence because the Pope is very significant figure. So I think he will just give and encourage for the peace in the Middle East.
And you are in Iznik, as I said a little bit earlier, Umut, and I just want you to give me a feeling about the mood right now. Is everyone excited? Are people going to go and see the Pope? Are you going to go and see the Pope? Is there a moment of real happiness?
Well, I don't know if I'm going to able to see the Pope because everywhere is closed now in Iznik, and most probably tomorrow it will not be able to. I mean, the city entrance will be closed. Whoever reached the Iznik already, they are lucky people. And also, unfortunately, where the Pope will come and make a mass and pray ceremony, and people will not, ordinary people will not able to see him because the police barriers are already settled down there. But Iznik is a very small town, and is very close to Istanbul and another municipality, which is Bursa city, but it's very small. Economically, is only depend on fishing and tourism. During the winter, there's no visitors in Iznik. I think Iznik is the first time, now is winter in Turkey, yeah? And I think it's the first time receiving visitors from all over the world and also from, Istanbul and Bursa. business are more excited here. They are receiving more people in coffee shops and in the town center and in the hotels. And tomorrow, as I heard from the officials, and 400 media institutions, and they will cover the event here. So Iznik people are regarding the event are very excited, as well as the journalists.
I think journalists always get excited. Thank you so much for joining us. It was great to have you on. Umut Sidev Tangor, it's a pleasure to speak to you. President Putin has addressed the US peace plan proposals to end the war between Russia and Ukraine. For the first time today, he said there are no final versions of the deal, but Russia is ready for serious talks and that he agrees Donald Trump's plan can be used as a basis for future agreements. He also said that Russia wants to agree with Ukraine eventually. Take a listen to some of what he had to say.
In general, we agree that the US-backed peace plan can be used as a basis for future agreements. But it will be impolite on my part to speak about any final versions because there are none. Given these documents, we saw that Washington has a desire to return to such issues. Every single question is a separate and serious matter. We are certainly ready for a serious discussion. The US delegation will visit Moscow next week.
Let's take a look at the top business news now. Tesla has opened its largest sales and service hub in India, even as the electric vehicle giant struggles with weak sales in the region. The car maker has sold just over 100 cars in India since its debut in July this year. EVs make up less than 3% of passenger vehicle sales in India, and charging infrastructure has been slow to develop. JP Morgan is planning to build a $13 billion new tower in London's financial district, Canary Wharf. The Wall Street Bank said the project would span over 6 years and create around 8,000 jobs. The planned 3 million square feet will be more than double the floor space of Britain's tallest building, which is, of course, the Shard. Turning to all the sports news now, when Liverpool are in the midst of their worst run in 71 years after a 4-1 loss against Dutch sports team PSV at Anfield. The team's stellar start was followed by a run of 6 defeats in 7 matches. The Merseyside club, which will take on Inter Milan next month, is just 1 point off the top 8 in the Champions League. And England have planned extra training sessions in Australia following their loss in the first Ashes test. The squad usually only train for 2 days or 3 days before a test. A reminder of our top stories. 2 National Guard soldiers remain in a critical condition after what President Trump's described as a monstrous ambush-style attack, allegedly by an Afghan national near the White House last night. 3 men have been arrested over a fire that engulfed a Hong Kong apartment complex, killing at least 83 people. Pope Leo XIV kicks off his first foreign trip of his papacy to Turkey. And that's all from us on W News. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on X. We'll be back in a couple of hours' time with W News Extra. Goodbye and thank you for joining us.